What's up, Southside Youth at both campuses? It's Pastor Dalton here from the Redstone campus. Hey, I'm so excited to be with you students this morning because we're going to be ending our Growing Deep series. I've had so much fun over the last month talking about all the different things that God has for us when it comes to growing deep. But today I'm really excited because I want to share a story with you first thing that I think will help illustrate where we're going. When I was growing up, I loved going to my grandparents' house. My grandpa would talk all the time about his life as a kid. One of his favorite things was eating with his family, and then afterwards they would gather around a device that, to be honest, if I showed you, you may not even know what it is. It was this really old box, and it had knobs on it. It was a really old school radio. I know most of us listen to Apple Music, Spotify, or YouTube, but for them, this was all they had. This was way before internet. So my grandpa would tell me they would sit around the table, they would eat, and then they would go sit around their radio and listen to the different broadcasts, messages. Some would be comedy, some would be drama. They loved it. As a family, it was their favorite thing. Today, we're going to be talking in God's Word in Matthew chapter 13. Jesus is going to be talking about a different kind of message that's broadcast. Check this out. Jesus, in chapter 13, we see him at a house on the side of a sea. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and he sat down while the whole crowd stood on the shore. He told them many things, many parables. Parables are teachings from Jesus that share a spiritual lesson about the kingdom. Jesus said this, "Consider the sower who went out to sow." A sower was essentially a farmer, and sowing was the action of broadcasting seed across the land, across your farm fields. So the sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell along the path. Birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on the rocky ground where it didn't have much soil, and it grew up quickly since the soil wasn't deep. But when the sun came up, it was scorched, and since it had no root, it withered away. Other seeds fell among the thorns, and the thorns came up and they choked them out. Still other seeds fell on the good ground and produced fruit, and some 100, some 60, some 30 times what was sown. Let anyone who has ears listen. So there's this sower, and he's broadcasting his seed across his land. He's sowing his seed so that it would eventually, hopefully, take root. And in this moment, we see the different types of soil. You see, Jesus is telling us a parable, which is usually a story to teach us something about the way he wants us to live. Hear this in verse 18. Jesus is going to explain these different types of soil. Listen to this. So listen to the parable of the sower, Jesus says. When anyone hears the word about the kingdom and doesn't understand it, the evil one comes and snatches it away, what was sown in their heart. This one is sown along the path. So the path is when they hear the message of the gospel, they hear Jesus' story, they don't understand it. Those are the people along the path. Next. And the one sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. But he has no root and is short-lived. When distress or persecution comes because of the word, immediately he falls away. You see, the ones that the gospel falls that are on the rocks, they get excited about Jesus. They get all pumped about Jesus. And maybe you've known some people like this. They're really, really hot and ready to go for Jesus. But something happens in their life and it's like just they walk away completely from their faith. They hear the gospel message, but it never takes root in their heart. It's short-lived. Those are the rocky soil. Next, check this out. The one sown among the thorns, this one who hears the word, but worries about the age and the deceitfulness of wealth, choke out the word, and they become unfruitful. So the ones that are thorns are the ones that hear the message of Jesus and reject it. Whether through their own sinfulness or the desires of the world and what the world has to say about Jesus, they reject Jesus. The thorns, I imagine, as the plant's growing, get choked out. That's one of the other soils. And finally, the last soil, but the one sown of the good ground, this is the one who hears and understands the word, who does produce fruit and yields some 100, and some 60, and some 30 times what was sown. So finally, we have the good soil, the one who hears the gospel and it takes root in their heart. Some of us, it takes root really deep at first, some of it shallow, but hopefully as they are growing in their faith, the good soil continues to grow deeper and deeper. So as we study this today, I want to ask you, have you ever shared your faith with others? Because essentially this is what Jesus is talking about. He's telling us that we, as believers, for those of us who are disciples of Jesus, those of us who've said yes to him somewhere in our lives, are called to share the message of the gospel with others. But Jesus is also telling us something important, that the sower sows seeds. He broadcasts his message no matter what. But what happens with the message is different. You see, have you ever been worried about sharing your faith with others because you're not sure what kind of soil they are? Well, what if I shared my faith with my friend? What if they reject it? Well, here's the thing. Jesus tells us that some people just will reject it. Some people will get excited about it. Some people will let it take deep root in their lives. Some won't understand it. But what I want you to hear today is this. Jesus calls you to broadcast his message. Here's the truth. Whatever happens to that message on the backside is up to Jesus. It's up to God what happens. What matters is your obedience to follow Jesus. Are you sowing seed for him? Are you broadcasting the message of Jesus to the world, to your friends, to your enemies, to your neighbors, to your teammates? Are you sharing the good news of the gospel to your friends? Because here's the thing, what happens to the seed is up to God. So today in small group, we're going to go more deep into this. We're going to talk about these things. We're going to ask again, reiterate what the different kind of soils are. And I want you to be encouraged. Share the gospel with others. What happens to it is up to God, because here's the deal. You have to obey. Let your obedience to the gospel grow you deep. I love you guys. I can't wait to hear what God does in this small group setting today. We'll see you next week here at Southside. Bye.